Good evening. Welcome to Brad Taylor's Fireside Chats. I'm being forced to do this by my wife, the DCOE. So you can ask me anything. I might not answer, but maybe I will. We had some questions beforehand that people sent in earlier, which I haven't seen, and Elaine's apparently going to read to me. Now, there are no rules. You can ask me about anything, honestly. National Security Affairs, my books, writing process, whatever you want. This could last 20 seconds or 2 hours, depending on who asks questions. I'm betting on 20 seconds.
We're going to hang out for a little bit and wait for more people to join, and then we'll get started. If the people who are on have questions, feel free to put them up. I do have some questions, but I'm just going to wait until we have more people, and then we'll answer the ones that we already have. But if somebody who's on wants to ask one, they can. Or you can just sit there and opine.
We already have.
Okay.
While we're waiting on more people.
Okay, you're the boss. Let's see. How about, do you have a planned number of books you are going to write, and how would you know when it's time to end the series?
No. I have no idea. I never thought I'd have one book published, much less 17. No, I've never given a thought to that. I don't think to the next book. Some writers are much better than I am. They can plan out, well, I'm going to write this in this book, and 5 books later, I'll have this happen. I don't do that. I give 100% to every single book I write, and when I'm done with that book, I then deal with the consequences in the next book from that book, and I kick myself saying, why did I do that in the last book? So I most certainly don't have in my head how many books I'm going to write. That, I don't know how I even came up with that idea.
Okay, so a couple of people are asking if you're drinking something good. What are you drinking?
Rum and Coke. Pike Logan's drink. Bacardi and Coke.
Oh, there we go. So Lim Lo Soy asks, will you be featuring that new blade you got from the knife maker in a future Pike Logan story?
Actually, believe it or not, that knife's been in the story. It's in a short story called the short story I can't remember of. The Temple. Was it the Temple? In Guatemala?
I don't.
It's in a short story, but I actually have the knife here. This is the actual original knife. Now, if you saw Alan Leschwitz's description of it, he said he's done a lot of changes to it. Not really. It looks basically like this. And this is his very, very old emblem. He has a new emblem now.
Can you bring it a little closer?
I don't know.
There you go. Yeah. That's the, I don't know if he still uses that emblem.
No, he doesn't at all. This is from '93. And he made fun of how big the handle was, but the handle fits my hand just perfectly. I designed it based on my hand. This is the Kydex sheath he built, which is now a leather sheath coming out. This is actually a belt clip, a Bianchi belt clip from a pistol holster I took apart and sent to him to put into the clip. And then we designed the sheath from there, which has got, ways to attach it all over the place in the Kydex snap.
And what would you attach it to?
We attach it anywhere. Your belt, you could put on your harness, wherever you want to.
I remember you wearing it on your harness.
And I wanted to make sure you put a little leather strap on there. It's hard to take that strap off. So you put a piece of Kydex behind there so you could pop it off of the sheath with one hand, take it out.
Is that one sharp enough to cut the hairs on your arm?
I'm pretty sure it still is.
You think so?
We'll have to see.
Let's see.
Well, I guarantee the backside is because that's the side I always cut.
Just don't cut yourself.
No,
Still cut.
it's bald.
Look at that. All right.
There's the hair.
30 years later, it's still sharp as can be.
Yeah, the front side may be dull because I use the front side a lot. I always kept the back side sharp. So if you ever needed a sharp blade, it was on the back of it. The front side I'd use for everyday tasks, and it's D2 steel. But this is the actual original. I'll let you know.
Very cool. Okay, so Bill Jordan says, based on something you said a couple years ago in Southern Pines, share if and when you've ever casted a bit of shade on a hotel or location based on a real situation.
Oh yeah, he's talking about. So I was doing research for Enemy of Mine, my only third book. I took a military flight out from Charleston Air Force Base, trying to get to LUD Cutter, which is an air base, and this bird was going all the way to LUD, so I flew it all the way to Frankfurt and was going to LUD. And then I found out in Frankfurt that I wasn't allowed to go to Al Udeid on this aircraft because it's a war zone. Trust me, Al Udeid is not a war zone. It's outside of Doha, Qatar. They're out there. That's where they send people for R&R. So I flew a commercial flight in, hired a unregistered cab, Pakistani guy, which Elaine said you're going to end up in the trunk, which I probably would have. And he was going to drive me around for like $20 a day. So that's what I did. And he gave me a phone, which was a phone that did not function. And his brother called me all night long, woke me up all night long. He would shout at me in Arabic, and I didn't understand what he was saying. And I hung the phone up the next morning.
Shh.
That's my dog.
I don't know what she's barking at.
And he was supposed to drive me around. He sent me to, I said, your phone's dead. There's no minutes on your phone. I can't call you. And he said, I'll tell you what, take the phone into this mall, this giant mall that's in Doha, Qatar, and put money on the phone, and whatever money you put on the phone, I'll take off the bill. And you can put however much you want on there. So I went in there, he drove away. I'm now by myself. It's during Ramadan, which means you're not allowed to eat. It's illegal to eat during Ramadan in Doha, Qatar. You can drink water, that's it. If you eat in public, you're going to jail. And so I went in there, and that comes into play later because I was starving by this point. I went into the mall, went to the phone store, and gave him the phone, said I need to put some minutes on it. He said, your phone's locked. And I didn't know the code to the phone. So now I don't have my driver. I'm stranded at this mall. It's about 6,000 degrees outside, surface of the sun hot. And I'm starving, absolutely starving, but there's nowhere to eat. And I looked off from the coast, which was about a half mile away, and there was a Four Seasons hotel. And I said, there's a bunch of gringos in that hotel. They gotta let them eat. And so I hoofed it. By the time I got there, I was drenched in sweat. I passed all the Lamborghinis and all the Maseratis that were parked out front. Because I was a Caucasian guy in Doha, they thought I was staying there. So I went inside and I said, hey, I'd like to get some food. Where can I go? Oh, yes, don't tell anybody, but if you go down to the basement, you can get some food. So I went down to the basement, ate some food. I got a hamburger, fries, and a Coke. That's what I got. 3 things. Hamburger, fries, and a Coke. I would have got a beer, but you can't get any alcohol inside Doha, Qatar. And so I ate, said I need my bill. And they brought the bill, and it was $75. This is 2013. It's $150 now. So in 2013, it was $75 for a hamburger, Coke, and some fries. And I said, I think there's a mistake here. They said, no, it's not a mistake, sir. Clearly, you aren't staying at the hotel because that's what everybody pays here. You heathen who's sweating everywhere. So I paid it, but I didn't have a lot of money at that time. And I was so mad, I went upstairs and argued with the concierge and said, that's a ridiculous price you have here. He said, well, that's just the way it is. You're going to have to pay it, and that's just the end of that. And I said to myself, I'm blowing this hotel up in the book. And I had no idea I was going to use a Four Seasons hotel inside Enemy of Mine, but I blew the shit out of that hotel. Killed the terrorists, killed a lot of people inside that hotel, blew the whole front part out. Including all the security guys who are out front with their metal detectors. I figured out how to get through the security of it and all that, and I killed them all.
That's nice.
But I actually thought that my publisher would change the name of the hotel. You can't say Four Seasons Hotel at this address. But they didn't. It's in the book.
That's funny. All right, so Brian Rose says that clip looks like one from an old M9 holster.
That's exactly what it's from. Good call.
Brian Rowe knows what he's
is.
talking about. Let's see. What other questions do we have? Other than Hall's, what other restaurant is a must-try in Charleston?
I'd say that would depend on what you're looking for. That's a wishy-washy answer, but if you're looking for seafood, I would go to, would you say Coast?
Well, Coast is kind of a loud, fun place.
Yeah.
Maybe 167 Raw or Amen
yeah.
Street. But I would say
Or
Fig.
Oysters.
If you want a really great restaurant, I'd say Fig.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different restaurants. For steaks, it's Hall's, hands down. But if we don't want steaks, there's a lot of eclectic, what's the burger joint? Leon's.
No, not Leon's. Leon's is oysters, and that's a really
Leon's is
cool
oyster
place.
place, yeah.
And then there's a burger place called Little Jack's Tavern. That's a cool place to go. There's so many places. If you're coming to visit, you need to just send us a DM and we'll give you some options. There's just every restaurant is really good. There's so many to choose from.
Right here is where you want to go see the Dolphins.
Yeah.
You're going to get nothing but fried food. Good cocktails, but fried food. But you can sit right on the water and see the Dolphins.
Yep. Brian Hamilton is asking, any chance you'll host a genre-specific writers retreat/seminar?
Me personally, I don't even know how I would do that. I'd be more willing to participate in one, but
Maybe if it's a
host one.
fundraiser for Special Operations Warrior Foundation.
Yeah, maybe I do that. But, I feel kind of like a charlatan saying I'm a writer anyway. People always ask me, give me some writing advice, and I'm like, nobody taught me how to write. I'm not embarrassed to say it.
Oh my gosh, the fire is.
That's my fire rifle.
You want to? Okay, you got to fix the fire while we're talking. You can be like Mr. Rogers, fixing the fire while you talk. Maybe you should put your socks on and talk. Just kidding. Okay, so in these chaotic times regarding plot topics in the genre, will non-state actor threats gain ascendancy over state threats as the task force enemies, or will state threats not be declining anytime soon?
The truth of the matter is, when I first wrote One Rough Man, I created the task force out of whole cloth. We don't have anything like that. And the reason for that was that I didn't want anybody to think I was writing about classified units I served in. But even given that, I wrote a charter for what the task force would do. And this was, way back when, 2009-ish. So I knew how they'd operate. They wouldn't operate all by themselves. They wouldn't get allowed to run amok. So they had a charter of what they could and couldn't do. And their first thing in the charter was they were only targeted against foreign terrorist organizations as designated by the State Department on the FTO list. If you've seen recently, people are talking about putting the cartels in Mexico on the FTO list, which I think is ridiculous, but there's an FTO list out there. And when I did that, I really caused an issue because now I want to start dealing with state threats, but technically it's against the charter for the task force that I created in the first book. This is what I was talking about earlier about I write something and then I'm like, how am I going to deal with this? So the FTO organizations, that's the only thing that task force is designed to go against. But they've obviously not. They've gone against China, Russia, you name it. And right now state systems are ascending, but I'll tell you, we never predict what's going to happen in the future. And I mean, if you'd written a book, September 9th, it would have been against China or Russia or something like that. What I do is I sit there and look at how the world is turning, what threats are out there, what threats I think are going to happen. I've got a couple threats in my head right now, actually, for a future book. What I think is going to bubble up. Sometimes they're sub-state, sometimes they're sub-state supported by a state, sometimes they're pure state. And I would not say that, I can't speak to how the thriller, my genre is going to go. I can only speak to what I do. And that's how I look at it. What is a threat that interests me? I'm going to read it first. If it interests me and I want to write about it, that's what I'm going to pick.
Okay, let's do one that came in prior. I think this is from Brian Simmons. The character development of Shoshana intrigues me. Pike seems to have a soft spot for her despite her mental health issues. Was her character based on a particular person, a combination of people, or purely a product of your creative process? Have you ever run into someone with that type of personality?
She came straight out of my head. And what I wanted to do, and some people who probably listen to this have heard this before, but I was going to whack her right off the bat. She was in Days of Rage, main character in Days of Rage. The whole point of her was creator. I wanted somebody who was Pike's skill set, but the complete opposite of Pike. And that's why she became female. Everything was opposite of Pike. Everything she did was opposite of Pike, but she was just as skilled as Pike. And I was going to kill her at the end of that book. And I liked her too much. So I put her on a shelf. I just let her ride off in the sunset. And I didn't have any plans. I didn't say I'm going to bring her back in the future and here's what my plan is. I just liked her too much. So I didn't kill her. And then 2 books, or maybe 3 books later, Insider Threat, I had the team in Jordan. They were running around Jordan, and I was recreating a new character, going to do the same thing I'd done with her. And I said to myself, you got them on the shelf. Why not just throw her in the book? You've already created the whole thing. And so I did. I got all these emails. Oh, she's back. I love it. Oh, it's the greatest thing ever. I was thinking, oh, thank God I didn't kill her. But I have known some people with those. My wife's call sign, her title is DCOE. Her call sign is Vulcan. Because she literally, you'll say a joke and she'll go, I do not get that.
That is not
That's
true.
I don't understand. A, B, C, D doesn't go to E.
That is not true.
And I had worked with a sergeant major one time that was kind of the same way, but nowhere near outside the box.
I'm just analytical, which is opposite of Brad.
Nowhere near outside the box as Shoshana is. She's pretty much from my imagination.
Okay, the next one. Do you base any of your characters on people you served with? That's from Michael Toss.
I have not specifically. I mean, Pike's an amalgam of people I have served with. There's a lot of people I've served with who are like Pike Logan, but I've never been a specific individual except for one. Axe is a sub-character. He actually ends up in the end of The Devil's Ransom. He's at the very end of it. He's been in a couple other books, just ancillary to things. And I was writing a scene. I was on a security contract, and I'd run out of call signs. And I was on a security contract with a call sign, Axe. And he is like 6'4". He looks like Mr. Clean.
That's what I was thinking.
He looks like a Call of Duty character. Bald head, huge beard, giant guy, muscles, everything you'd think in Call of Duty. And I said, I'm out of call signs. And you don't want to use somebody else's call sign in a book because they'll think you're writing about them. So you're trying to make up call signs you've never heard of. And I said, can I use your call sign? And he said, well, that depends. Is that guy going to be a pussy?
Brad?
Or supposed to say baby, aren't I? That guy going to be a baby?
Oh my gosh, I can't believe you just said that.
Well, that's what he said.
Oh God.
And I said, no. Let me write the scene. You can read it. And if you don't like it, I'll give you your call sign. So I wrote the scene, let him read it. He said, yeah, use my call sign. And so he's reappeared. He's the only one that's based on a character. It's an ancillary character. It only appears once every 4
Based on someone you served with, you mean?
Someone I served with.
Yeah.
He's the only one.
Okay. Someone says, I know the answer to this one. 20,000. He's 20,000 words into his first book, Justin William. He said, so much that I want to edit already. Should I fix it now or finish the book first?
Well,
fix it now.
That's what I do. So, I mean, there's people who write the whole book and then they go back and edit. They just say, get it all out there and then edit it. I don't do that because I'm always thinking about the next scene and I'm not ready to write the next scene. So I will do, it could be 1 chapter, it could be 10 chapters, depending on how much I can barf out at a single time. But as I'm thinking about the next thing, I go back and reread it and I edit it. And I'll go back and reread it and edit it as I'm thinking. So my process is more 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Do you remember with One Rough Man when you'd ask me, what should I do? And I'd say, oh, just wait. You can edit it later. And then that was the worst advice because at the end, we were like, oh my God, it's too hard to edit it later. Okay, this is a good one for us. Favorite Clint Eastwood film?
Unforgiven.
Yeah, there's no question. Unforgiven.
Unforgiven. Best movie ever made.
Little fact.
Actually quoted in any of mine.
Little factoid on Unforgiven. I got to go to the premiere where I met Clint Eastwood in Monterey, California. My boss bought tickets to the premiere because he lived there, and it was really cool. There were a lot of stars there, so that was fun. Let's see. Who would you like to see play Pike in a movie?
I hate this question. I can't answer that question. I learned early on in my writing career, in the advent of social media, somebody, it may have been even me who posted it, something about, this is who I think Pike would be. And then everybody started attacking everybody, stabbing everybody in the head about who should be Pike, and you're an idiot, and that guy's an idiot, and you're an idiot. And then I said, well, here's who I think Pike should be. And then it became, see, I agree with him, no, you're an idiot. And back and forth, because I wrote the book, what I said seemed to matter more than what anybody else thought, when the truth of the matter is, you're a reader, I'm a reader. Who you think should be Pike is just as valid as who I think should be Pike on the screen itself. So I never answer that question.
Okay, so here's another one. The gadgets the task force uses, how difficult is it to come up with the ones not brought off the shelf, so to speak?
It's actually not that hard anymore. In the old days, when I say the old days, right when I retired from the military, in 2010-ish, like the CIA has DS&T, Director of Science and Technology, and that's where all the James Bond Q stuff was. They were the ones inventing all this neat stuff that was used around the world. If you want some really neato James Bond stuff, you had to go to the CIA to get it. Well, technology has completely eviscerated that, and now CIA is going to open shelf stuff and just carbonizing that for what they want to use. So everything that's out open shelf, there's so much of technology that goes on with just the Internet of Things, all that kind of stuff, that is so easy to figure out how to use something. And I'll give you a good example of that. in American Trader. I got a Roomba for my wife, the DCOE for Christmas, and it ran around the house. Took 6 hours to do the first time, 4 hours second time. Eventually, it's running around the house in 1 hour doing everything. And then it says, "Hey, we want to upload your floor plan to the cloud." And I was like, "You lost your damn mind! Put my floor plan of my house in the cloud? That's insane!" And then I immediately thought, I can use that in a book. And so they get a house, find out there's a Roomba attached to Wi-Fi, crack the Wi-Fi, get the floor plan, which is a golden egg for a house is sold. You can do an unknown floor plan, but it's much better to know how many rooms there are, where the furniture is, all of that. And so I use that. So that the technology now is such a blending of what's out in the civilian world versus what I mean, there's also obviously some technological components of what you can and cannot crack. I mean, we live in South Carolina, so we're watching the Murdaugh trial. I had no idea that your iPhone, when it went from portrait to landscape, would record in the iPhone. And then they could use that in the trial. So there's a ton of things that go on that we can track from. I had a guy, I used a technology in the Devil's Ransom. They're trying to rescue Johan outside of Tajikistan. And I went to dinner with him. Well, I can't say it's classified. He's the guy that's still in. But he basically told me, that's old school what you're doing. We do it this way now. So there's things that I don't really, understand as far as deep technological stuff. But a lot of it is now just pure civilian.
Okay, so next question. In Exit Fee, the plot revolved a lot around human trafficking. As a resident of the Low Country, this is an issue that affects our community. Myrtle Beach seems to be a problem area. What type of research went into writing about this subject matter? I found it particularly chilling because you wrote about real places in Charleston and the surrounding area. It's actually a major problem in this area.
Yeah.
And we don't have enough police on the task force that handles this here at all.
No, I had some friends that worked the issue. And a lot of it was not so much studying the problem set for Charleston as it was a problem set writ large, getting the linguistics down, the slang down, how people are recruited, what they're used for, how they're used, where they go, how they evade capture, how they maintain their the people they do capture.
And actually, the lingo used was how you came up with the title, Exit Fee.
Yeah. Well, there's just a ton of stuff that I did. Research on just the problem set, and Elaine's right, we had some friends that worked the issue, and so it was more of a holistic human trafficking, what happens in the United States versus what happens specifically in Charleston.
Okay, so this person's asking about your writing process. Outlines or seat of the pants, which writing style do you favor, and did you start on one from the get-go, or did you move from one to the other over time?
Well, no, my very first book was just a stream of consciousness.
That's definitely true.
I just wrote that. There was not a real, although I did write one outline.
You could not get that out of you fast enough.
So
it was fascinating to watch.
Which went off in 18,000 different directions, which all got changed. I mean, I was doing this thing one way and that way, and then it just was like, that's stupid, and it wasn't very efficient. The book ended up being 185,000 words, which eventually got cut down to like 120. But I do what I call a framework. So I don't do an outline where this is chapter 1, this is chapter 2, this is chapter 3. I do. I know the threat vector. I know the setting. I know where it's going to be at. I know who the bad guys are. I know who obviously the good guys are. And 90% of the time, 100% of the time, I would have said, until No Fortune Son, I would know the ending. Now it's about 85, 90% of the time I know the ending, which will change. Like, actually, Devil's Ransom changed. A couple of them changed. End of Days actually changed as well. Just because of the way it goes. So I don't know the granularity of what's going to happen within a given time frame. I do go overseas and do a ton of research, book research, and all that stuff's still in my head. So when I'm trying to, there's some kind of theme or thing I want to happen in a scene, I go back in my head and say, okay, where can I do that at? And then remember, oh yeah, there was that super cool tunnel. That's the perfect spot. And so then I'll go back and look at the pictures and do the research again. And so I don't, I guess I kind of do both, I guess is the best thing to say.
Somebody just commented and said, please tell me you have your unit Caspian 45, or just nod.
I don't have it. Do you know how much they charge for that thing?
You
I
don't?
couldn't afford that when I left.
Which
I
book?
do have a unit gun coming.
Which book of the series was the most enjoyable for you to write?
Most enjoyable to read? They're all pretty fun. I guess it would be No Fortunate Son, because we really enjoyed the book research trip, and that was, I was doing 2 books a year then, so you really had to crank them. That was probably the most fun to write.
Okay, I'm an old military government guy. I'm also a concealed carry proponent. I carry both a Sig 9 and a Beretta 9. Do you have a favorite? Pistol, I guess.
I don't have a Sig or a Beretta.
We have a Sig. We don't
Well,
have a
you
Sig.
have a Sig,
We don't have a
226.
Sig 9, but
Well, you got a 226, it's 9.
oh, 9 millimeter. Sorry, I don't know all the lingo.
I guess I would say the Sigs. I don't like Berettas. No offense.
Greg
Everybody
White
gets
just
mad.
signed on.
Everybody gets mad at me when I say I don't like Berettas, but I don't like Berettas. So.
Greg White just signed on. If you want to say hi.
Right?
Hey, Whitey. Have you ever thought of doing any crossover work with Pike and the Gray Man teaming up?
Actually, Greeny's a good friend of mine, really good friend.
Grainy.
And yeah, I don't know his last name. She corrects me forever. We have a friend of ours, which Whitey will know, Dave Wilberdink. It's not his name.
He says his name wrong every single time.
The problem with trying to team up with anybody is everybody's got their own organization. And so it would make no sense. For instance, Vince Flynn's got the Orion team. I got the task force. Why would there be 2 of those things? And how would they work? Why would the government make 2 of those things? And it's
Maybe
kind
they'd
of the
fight
same
each
way-
other.
It's still making sense. They work for the same government.
I know. I'm kidding.
It's kind of the same way with the Gray Man. So he's got his organization he's working for, and my organization's doing what I'm doing. Although his would be it would be easier to intertwine those 2 than others, but it just would be too hard to function that way.
Okay, let's see. Who are your favorite authors in your genre other than yourself? That's kind of a hard one to answer.
Well, you mean Mark Green.
Yeah, Mark Green.
Pretty easy,
He's a
yeah.
great dude. Let's see. Oh, he says they can't hear you. Can you speak up a little bit? They can only hear me. I guess I'm loudmouth.
Well, the microphone's facing.
I know. The problem with this setup is that the microphone faces me. So just speak a little louder.
Great.
Let's see. The third first-person POV, narrative POV, is one of my favorite things about the series and makes it unique. How did you decide on that when starting the series?
Let me get closer so you can hear me. That's actually a strange thing. I wrote the entire first book in third person, everything in third person, and I worked with a freelance editor who was a pain in my ass. And one time she asked me to send her.
I hope she's not watching.
She's not. She lives in England now.
Well, Greg is in West Pow Pow, and he's watching.
Aren't you in bed? Or maybe you should be at work. So she said, send me Pike's, bio. I want you to write me from his perspective what's going on. And I just was incensed. I'm like, what am I, in high school? I'm not doing any writing exercises. And so I wrote her the biggest smart-ass thing I'd ever written. Just was scathingly sarcastic about where Pike Logan came from. And she said, this is some of the best stuff you've written. You need to go back to the book, and anytime you see Pike, put him in first person, which was a shit ton of work. And so I did, and she was right. You can get a lot more stuff out in first person about what Pike's thinking, and you can still do the third person when Pike's not in the room. So it's Jennifer's POV's third person. She's looking at Pike. You can see what she's thinking, but you don't know what Pike's thinking. And then later on I was told, how'd you know to break that rule? You're not allowed to do that in books. And I was like, nobody told me it was a rule. If I didn't know it was a rule, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I've done it ever since because it really does give me flexibility. It gives me the best of both worlds to do, the antagonist is thinking this way and Pike's thinking that way.
All right. Any other questions from anybody watching?
I'm not through with my drink.
Yeah. Greg says he wants to meet Pike Logan. I was thinking he probably already has. So Chuck Coppinger says, what are you reading this month?
My own book. I'm desperately typing right now. So I do, the other guy asked a question earlier, I type at night, wake up in the morning and read what I wrote.
Yeah, so you're writing and then rereading what you've...
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Do I have a question?
Can we wrap it up?
Well, we might have to. Does anyone else have questions? We're nearing the 30-minute mark. So surely someone on here has another question they can type in.
That's when you know you're desperate. Fire's about to go out.
All right.
So, well, thank you very much for
Hold
showing
on.
up.
Well, Greg says wait. Does that mean he has a question?
Is
Greg?
that Whitey?
Yeah, Whitey. Let's see.
Whitey, we just had dinner with Fran Bodette. He told me stories.
Oh. Is Pike a character from your team?
Is that from Whitey?
No, this is from Chuck Coppinger.
No.
There's some more questions coming in now. Okay.
It's, he's an amalgamation of people I served with. There is one guy, Tyson Nick, is probably the closest to Pike that I served with. But he's not designed to look like or anything like that. Just what he does is probably the closest.
Let's see. Going back a few decades, did you ever read any of Greg Walker's Spring Blade books?
No, but I read Greg Walker's nonfiction stuff.
Okay. Can you tell us anything about the current book you're writing?
Elaine doesn't like me doing this, but I will.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I picked Ukraine, which was an idiotic choice because the problem with writing current events is they're current and you can never predict what's going to happen. But I read a story about a system that the Soviets have. I'm not supposed to say it. You know?
No, not yet. No.
I'm not allowed to say.
You can't say
It
yet.
involves Putin and a bunch of death.
You gotta save some stuff for later. Whitey's saying, is Pike gonna come to Indonesia? We haven't done that yet.
No, we haven't. We're actually thinking about that, but you guys get kidnapped all the time. Good luck.
He says Pike comes to the mine and works for PTFI. He says, Brad, I see you're still in the gym.
Yeah, you can see my belly.
Not as much as me. Sean Cameron says, do you write dry or is bourbon involved in the process?
No, it used to be. We went through COVID and we were drinking so much we had to quit. So, we were like waking up, look, it's noon.
I'm sure we're not the only ones. Jen Cook says, did you always know that you wanted to be an author when you left the service?
I knew I wanted to be an author before I even joined the service.
On our very first date, he told me
Yeah.
that he wanted to go in special forces and he wanted to write a novel.
I never thought it'd get published.
Who knew?
I just knew I'd want to write a book, and it would sit on my bedside table, and I'd have my daughter, who doesn't read any of my books, would read that very first one and say, "You're a great writer, Dad." Now she doesn't bother to read any of them. But I just knew I was going to write a book. I didn't know I was going to be published. I was just going to write a book.
Are Amina and Jennifer going to be on a mission?
Jennifer's
on every mission, pretty much.
Well, they're on a mission in Exit Fee, right here.
Yeah. Let's see. Whitey says, this is a great forum. I like the bourbon. Thanks for your comments. Let's see. I'm trying to see if I missed any. Here's one. Is there a Pike Logan movie like The Gray Man on Netflix?
Yeah, you haven't seen it yet? No, not yet. And that's just probably because I'm a coward. I've turned down offers that now looking back on, I probably should have taken. I was just worried that, once you give the rights up, you're done. It's all said and done, and you can't do anything about it. And so I was too big a coward to give the rights up, and now I look around going, man, that was stupid.
Whitey says, can I work for Blaisdell Industries? Of course. I
think you're too flamboyant, Whitey.
Sean Cameron says, for the DCOE, was Brad Stuff your intro into thrillers? No, I was a huge Clive Cussler fan.
I couldn't stand Clive Cussler.
No, don't say that on live TV.
Oh, I'm sorry. I loved him too.
I wanted to name, if we had a boy, I wanted to name him Dirk.
I wanted to name him Thor.
So no, he was not my intro. Brian Rose says, "Do you miss the military?" Yeah, we miss the military, but we don't miss the deployments.
Yeah, I don't miss the deployments, but I certainly miss camaraderie.
Yeah, we really miss our military
Every
friends.
time we get together with military people, which happens more and more infrequently, once or twice a month or so,
Yeah,
we really have a great time.
yeah.
Like I was just Whitey's on here right now, and I was with Fran Bodette and Mark Irwin, who Whitey knows both of them, and it was nothing but Whitey stories.
So let's see. Will there be a new task force member soon?
I actually was kicking that around for this book,
Scoot over a little bit.
but she's going to tell me to sit up or do
Yeah,
something.
you were out of the screen. There you go.
But I decided not to, just because I've got enough, the way it's going right now, I've got enough members. Sometimes you get in a problem with, I've got too many people. What am I going to do with everybody? It's really hard to write a scene when you've got a 5-man team and all 5 are supposed to be doing something. And everything they have to do in the real world, in a real military, you can have 3 guys sit outside a window where everybody else sits a house and they don't do a damn thing. You write a book, they better do something for the plot. And so you've got to figure out, okay, what's going to happen here to engage all 5 members of this team. And so I've now, well, I'll let this out. Shoshana's going to be back, and that's going to be a 6th person. And so it's causing a little bit of fits. I'm thinking maybe I have to kill somebody.
Oh no, you can't kill anybody else. I won't allow it. Let's see. They are asking, there's a couple questions about, are you or would you consider creating another series or writing some books that don't have Pike in them?
Not really. Maybe in the future if I ever run out of Pike stories. But if I did something like that right now, you know, it would be a guy who was blonde-haired and brown-eyed, and he'd be Pike. It'd just be a different name, and he'd be running around doing Pike stuff.
Well, you did write The Target, which was Shoshana and Aaron's backstory, but Pike wasn't in it. Yeah.
And then the recruit is pure Knuckles and Decoy. I mean, I've got some novellas that venture off into other tangents, but they're still task force type things.
Right. What was the one that was it? The recruit that had, was it Knuckles and Decoy?
I just said that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I must have had a brain lapse. Okay. Well, that looks like we don't have any additional questions. Does anybody else have questions? I'll give you a second to type them in if there's any other questions.
And
I have a question. So when do you think you're going to turn in the book that you're currently writing?
I don't know, Elaine. Why do you keep bugging me about that?
Because I want to go on vacation. All right. Well, it looks like that's the end of our questions. Would you like to make some closing remarks since it's the fireside chat?
Not really. Elaine doesn't tell me how these are going to work. She sat me down here and then she said, "Oh, you're going to do the introduction, and then you're going to do this, and you're going to do that." And I'm like, "Okay, here I am." So, no, thank you very much for being here. And you know, if you enjoyed it, leave me a review on Goodreads. No.
Oh, here's one last question. Is it tough to kill off main characters?
Yes. There's been plenty that I have regretted. Combat's unforgiving, though. Sometimes that happens. And for that specific book, it was the right thing to do. And then the very next book, I've been like, why did I do that? Especially when you spend a lot of time writing that character. So there's not I mean, you know, in Star Trek, you see the lieutenant with a red shirt, and you're like, that guy's dead. You know, as soon as you see him walking stage, okay, he's the guy that's going to die. And mine are never like that. And it worked really well for the book I'm in, but I really regret it later. I really do.
So, all right. Looks like that's it. So this
Thank you
was
very
really
much.
fun. I hope everyone could hear more than just my loud mouth. So this was great.
This is all Elaine's idea, the DCOE, and I fought it tooth and nail, but I guess it wasn't that painful. Thank you very much for being here.
All right.
I hope you guys have a great weekend.
Greg, Whitey has one last thing. I'll just tell him he does have the leather jacket, but it only comes out for the book tour.
Yeah, we're once a year. Once a year.
All right, y'all. Have a great night.